If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, Nintendo wasn't just a company, it was childhood. Super Mario, Pokémon, The Legend of Zelda. These weren't just games, they were cultural milestones. For decades, Nintendo sat on top of the gaming world. But then, almost overnight, it all started to crumble. Competitors caught up, consoles flopped, and people began asking, is Nintendo finished? Except this isn't a story about failure, it's a comeback story. Because somehow Nintendo found a way to fall flat on its face and still land on its feet with billions in profit. Let's break down how Nintendo pulled off one of the greatest turnarounds in business history. Let's rewind to the early 2000s. Nintendo was struggling. Sony had the PlayStation 2, which became the best-selling console of all time with more than 155 million units sold. Microsoft had just entered the gaming world with the Xbox, packing cutting-edge graphics and online multiplayer. And Nintendo, they were selling the GameCube. Now, the GameCube wasn't a bad console. It had classics like Super Smash Bros. Melee and Metroid Prime. But commercially, it was a disaster. The PlayStation 2 outsold it 6-1. Developers started skipping Nintendo altogether because it wasn't profitable to make games for such a small audience. Nintendo's market share dropped to single digits. Analysts were calling them irrelevant. In 2004, The Economist literally ran a headline, "Game over for Nintendo?" And then, Nintendo did something that would define their identity. Instead of trying to outmuscle Sony or Microsoft, they zigged while everyone else zagged. Enter the Nintendo Wii in 2006. At first, people laughed. No HD graphics, no Blu-ray player, and controllers that looked like TV remotes. Sony and Microsoft were boasting about horsepower, and Nintendo showed up with motion controls. But here's the thing, it worked. Nintendo realized most people weren't hardcore gamers, they just wanted fun, simple experiences. Suddenly, grandparents were playing Wii bowling. Families played Wii Sports on Christmas morning. The Wii went on to sell over 101 million units, more than the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Nintendo proved a powerful point. You don't always win by being the best. Sometimes you win by being the most different. But this high didn't last. In 2012, Nintendo released the Wii U. And oh boy, the Wii U was one of the biggest flops in gaming history. The marketing was confusing. Was it a new console? Was it an accessory for the Wii? Even the name sounded like an expansion pack, not a new system. Developers bailed, gamers ignored it. By the time Nintendo pulled the plug, the Wii U had sold just 13 million units worldwide. Compare that to Sony's PlayStation 4, which sold 117 million. Nintendo's stock tanked. The company reported its first annual loss in decades. Commentators once again declared Nintendo dead. But here's where the comeback really starts, because instead of quitting, Nintendo doubled down on creativity. In 2017, they released the Nintendo Switch. The concept was simple but genius. A hybrid console you could play at home or take on the go. It wasn't about competing with PlayStation or Xbox in graphics. It was about freedom and accessibility. And it worked like magic. Within 3 years, the Switch had sold more units than the Wii U did in its entire lifetime. As of 2023, it has sold over 130 million units, making it one of the best-selling consoles of all time. And the software? That's where the real money is. Nintendo's franchises are basically money-printing machines. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold over 60 million copies. Animal Crossing New Horizons sold 40 million copies, fueled by lockdowns during the pandemic. Pokémon continues to move games and merchandise like no other franchise. In total, Nintendo's franchises generate billions annually. Mario alone has been estimated to be worth over 30 billion as a brand. Pokémon, over $100 billion in lifetime revenue, making it the highest-grossing media franchise ever, more than Star Wars, more than Marvel. But Nintendo's comeback isn't just about one good console, it's about diversifying. They opened Super Nintendo World theme parks in Japan and the US. They launched a hit movie, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide in 2023. That's not just a win, It's the highest-grossing video game adaptation ever. They license their characters for merchandise, toys, and even partnerships with companies like Lego. Nintendo figured out that their characters aren't just for games, they're cultural icons. And here's the real kicker. Nintendo makes money differently from most companies. Sony and Microsoft often sell consoles at a loss, hoping to make it back on game sales. Nintendo? They sell hardware at a profit from day one. So every Switch sold was already adding to the bottom line before you even bought a single game. So how did Nintendo pull this off? One, they leaned into their strengths. Nintendo knows they're not the kings of raw power, so they focus on fun, family-friendly experiences. Two, they embrace failure. The Wii U was a disaster, but instead of giving up, they learned from it. The confusion of the Wii U led directly to the simplicity of the Switch. Three, they think like storytellers. Mario, Zelda, and Pokémon aren't just products. They're narratives you join, worlds you live in, and people will keep paying to revisit those worlds. There's a lesson here for every business. You don't need to be the biggest or strongest player to win. You need to know your strengths, take creative risks, and build an emotional bond with your audience. Nintendo went from being written off as a relic to dominating again. And the best part, they did it without becoming a clone of Sony or Microsoft. Nintendo's story proves that even when the game looks over, there's always a chance to hit restart. So next time you hear someone say, "game over" in business, remember Nintendo. They're proof that the comeback can be stronger than the setback. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe. Every week I unpack business stories, strategies, and comebacks that shape the world around us. See you in the next one.